session. Remain seated, remain quiet.
This is case 1561128, people of the state of Michigan versus Michael Sykes. Defendant is charged with count 1, assault with intent to murder. Count 2, assault with intent to do great bodily harm, less than murder. Count 3, peace officer, disarming firearm. Count 4, police officer, assaulting, resisting, obstructing. Count 5, escape, awaiting trial for felony. Defendant is present for exam. Okay, good morning, your appearance.
Good morning, Your Honor. Lauren Stephanie on behalf of people.
Thank you.
Good morning, Honor. Jimmy Okuja appearing on behalf of Michael Sykes.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Kuja, and good morning, Mr. Sykes.
Good morning.
Okay, are the parties ready to proceed to examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
Any preliminary matters?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
Mr. Kuja?
No, Your Honor, I just indicate for the record that I was handed some additional discovery this morning from the prosecutor, but it's my understanding that it doesn't relate to what she intends to present at the exam.
That's correct, Your Honor. People will not be presenting the new evidence that we have provided counsel today. Okay, thank you. If there are no other preliminary matters, then no sequestration order.
I would ask for a sequestration order, a mutual sequestration order, but I'd ask for an exception from my officer in charge who is seated to my right. That being Detective Dixon.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kuja.
No objection, Judge.
Then the sequestration order is in place. The exception is granted for the officer in charge. If nothing else, the people may call their witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, I'd like to call Deputy Lacey Polderdyke.
Last name, please.
Polderdyke. First name Lacey, Lacey.
Thank you. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth? So help you God?
Yes.
Have a seat. Pull the mic close to the mouth. Okay, you may proceed.
Thank you. Can I give your name for the record?
Lacey Polderdyke.
Thank you. And how are you employed, Ms. Polderday?
With the Wayne County Sheriff's Office.
All right. And so from here on out, I'll call you Deputy Polderday? Thank you. And were you working your capacity as a deputy with are you with the Wayne County Sheriff's Department?
Wayne County Sheriff's Office.
All right. And were you working your capacity as a deputy on October 1st, 2015?
Yes.
Where were you assigned that day?
G2 Judge Dalton Roberson's courtroom.
All right. And what was occurring in that courtroom that day?
Jury trial for Michael Sykes.
Okay. Do you see that individual in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Please identify where that individual is in the courtroom today and what that individual is wearing.
In the red jumpsuit at the defense table.
Okay. Let the record reflect that witness has identified defendant Michael Sykes.
Thank you. And just if you can pull that microphone in just a little bit closer. Thank you.
Hmm?
No objection?
No objection.
Okay, thank you. May continue.
All right. And what were your role and duties that day?
Courtroom security.
Okay. Were you working alone?
No, with my partner.
And what's your partner's name?
Russell Herr.
All right. And where were you stationed in the courtroom?
We were standing near Mr. Sykes.
Okay. And was this in the middle of trial?
Yes.
All right. And around what time of day was this?
11:30.
Okay.
Between 11:30 and 12.
All right. And did something happen that required further attention by you?
Yes.
What happened?
One of the victims on the case that the jury trial was going for motioned for me to come to the back of the courtroom.
Okay. And what did you do?
Went to see what she needed.
All right. And don't tell me what she said, but what was the nature of her concern?
That the defendant was staring at her.
All right. And as a result, is that a security concern for you?
It could be.
Okay. What did you do based on that information from this individual, from one of the victims?
Asked the defendant to stop staring at her.
Okay. Did you in fact observe whether or not the defendant had been staring at her, or in that direction?
He'd been looking in that direction all week throughout the
Okay.
trial.
Throughout the trial? All right. And when you told the defendant to stop staring at her, what was his reaction?
He didn't say anything.
Okay. What happened then?
His attorney, Ms. Diallo, verbalized to the judge that the deputy, myself, had just asked him to stop looking at the victims, and there was some exchange between Ms. Diallo and the judge.
Okay. And I just want to clarify, where was this courtroom?
On the ground floor, G2.
Okay. Would that be this building that we're in today?
Yes.
Okay. And just for the record, Frank Murphy Hall of Justice?
Yes.
All right. And when Ms. Diallo addressed the court, what happened?
The judge stated that, that he shouldn't be looking toward the victims, and Ms. Diallo stated that she believed he was looking at her and that he had a right to look at his counsel.
Okay. And what was the demeanor of the defendant at this time as this exchange is going on between his attorney, Ms. Diallo, and the judge?
He was getting visibly agitated.
All right. What was he doing that gave you the impression he was becoming agitated?
He was fidgeting in his chair, moving back and forth in it. He kept looking back at his mom and the other female that was in the gallery. He was kind of like balling his fist into his hand and just very fidgety.
Okay, and let the record reflect that witness did just make a motion, one hand open, another hand balled up in his fist, punching into her open hand.
Okay, thank you. You may continue.
And what happened then after the judge addressed Ms. Diallo?
The jury was excused.
Okay. And once the jury was excused, what happened?
Ms. Diallo and the judge spoke on record about a few more things.
All right. And at this time, was the defendant still agitated?
Yes.
Was he still making any motions, fist motions with his hand?
I don't recall.
Oh. But you could still observe he was still agitated?
Yes.
All right. And what happened then?
He attempted to speak to the judge. The judge told him to shut up.
And when you say he, are you referring to the defendant?
Yeah, Mr. Sykes.
Okay. And once the judge told him to shut up, what happened?
The jury was excused for the weekend and told to come back on Monday.
All right. And at this time, is this your cue to remove the defendant from the courtroom?
I believe Ms. Diallo was still putting a few more things on record after the jury left.
Okay. And what happened after that?
The judge, because of how Mr. Sykes was acting, the judge told my partner Russ and I to get him out of the courtroom.
All right. Now, how is he acting? Had he increased his agitation that the judge wanted him out of the courtroom?
I'm sorry, Ms. Lujan.
Well, I don't think it assumes an answer, Your Honor.
It's not assuming an answer. She's already indicated that because of the way he was acting, the judge was excused him, so she can answer the question overruled.
Thank you.
He was attempting to speak to the judge.
Okay.
And so the judge said, get him out of here.
And had the judge already repeatedly told him not to address him?
I don't believe he told him not to address him. He had told him, you better shut up, as I previously stated.
Okay. And now, did you remove the defendant from the courtroom?
I ordered him into the back. I told him, let's go.
Okay. And when you ordered him to the back, were you assisted by your partner, Deputy Russell?
Yes.
Okay, Deputy Russell Hurd? Okay. Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay. And can you tell me, how did you begin to remove the defendant from the courtroom?
I asked him, I said, let's go.
Okay. And did he comply?
Not at first.
All right. What was he doing that he didn't comply initially?
He just cold stared and sat in his chair.
Okay. All right. Did you ask him again?
Yes.
And did he comply at that point?
He stood up very quickly and sort of like shoved his chair back behind him.
Okay. And at this time, when he stood up quickly and shoved his chair behind him, were you facing him?
Yes.
All right. Where was Deputy Russell Hurd?
Off to the side,
Okay.
to the defendant's side.
All right. And what happened then? What happened at that point?
Mr. Sykes turned toward the gallery, like turned his back toward me to attempt to speak to his mom and the other female in the gallery, and Russell and I kind of like escorted him. We were standing behind him, and we had a hand, each of our hands on his back, and we're kind of directing him. You have to walk up into the jury box to get out of the courtroom. We have two jury boxes.
Now let me ask you, was he cuffed?
No.
All right. So his hands were free?
Yes.
And his legs were not shackled either?
No.
Okay. And as you're leading him out, what happened? What's your formation around him?
Russell walked him up into the jury box. I kind of walked down in front of the jury box to stand in between the defendant and where his mom and the other female, I don't know what her relation was, but where they were in the gallery. He kept attempting to talk to them. Miss Diallo was still talking to him, and he was attempting to talk to his family still.
And had you or Deputy Russell Hurd told him to not address anyone in the courtroom?
Repeatedly.
But he was still trying to address his mother and the other female?
Yes.
All right. And at this time, what are you doing?
What am I doing?
Right.
Just walking with Russell and the defendant toward the back.
Okay. And as you're moving to the back, what happened?
He walked into the back hallway,
When you say he, who are you referring to?
the defendant and my partner, and my partner continued down the hallway with him. I stayed at the door.
And let me ask you, what is the positioning of the defendant and, just for records purposes, I'm going to say Russell. Where is Russell? Is he in front of the defendant or behind the defendant?
Directly behind him.
Directly behind him. Okay. And what happens as they're going into the back?
As they approached the holding cell door, the defendant pivoted and turned really quick and ran at me.
Okay.
He shoved Russell out of the way and ran at me.
And now let me ask you, why were you standing behind and to the back of Russell?
Because I was the cover officer. I had my firearm on me still.
Okay. And did Deputy Russell Hurd have his weapon?
No.
Is that why he took that position directly behind the defendant?
That's why he walks him to the holding cell.
Okay. And now I'm just going to back up now. You said that he shoved Deputy Russell Hurd?
He turned, shoved him out of the way and ran at me.
Shoved him out of the way? Okay. What did he do at that point that he shoved Russell out of the way?
He ran at me.
Okay. Did he say anything as he was running at you?
He just grunted.
Okay. And when he ran at you, what happened then?
He tackled me.
All right. And did you fall?
Yes.
Okay. Did he fall onto your back?
Yes.
All right. Where was the defendant this time?
On top of me.
On top of you? What did he do when he was on top of you?
Put his hands
How
up.
did he push you, tackle you down?
He tackled me with both arms, like a bear hug almost.
Okay,
And
let the record reflect that the witness made a motion with both arms in that hugging motion. You may continue. All right. And did he in fact get both arms around you?
when he tackled me, yes.
Okay. And then once you're on the ground and he's on top of you, what does he do then?
He put his hands around my throat.
Okay. And when he put his hands around your throat, did he apply pressure?
No.
Okay. What did he do then?
He quickly switched and put his right forearm across my neck.
Okay.
And reached behind my back with his left arm.
All right. And now when he put that forearm on your neck, did he apply pressure?
Yes.
Okay. That pressure, were you able to breathe?
With effort. I could breathe, but it was restricted.
Okay, so now your breathing was strained at this time?
Yes.
And that's as a result of his placing his forearm across your neck?
Yes.
All right. Now, and with his other hand, what was he doing?
Reaching behind my back.
Okay. And what's behind your back?
My gun at that point.
Okay. At that point, you said your gun was behind your back? Or is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay. Now, was your gun holstered initially?
Initially it was.
All right. At what point did it become unholstered?
I don't know.
You don't know. All right. But that side, the side that the defendant is reaching around you, is that the side where your weapon is supposed to be holstered?
Yes.
Okay. And what is the defendant doing as he's reaching around you?
Tugging. It felt like a tugging motion.
Okay. And that's underneath your back
Yes.
area? And is that where is your gun at this time?
I knew it wasn't in my duty belt anymore.
Okay.
I didn't know where
did
it
you believe
was.
it was? Did you feel anything under you?
Yes.
What did you feel?
An object.
Okay. Did you believe that to be your weapon?
Yes.
All right. And is that the same area where you felt the defendant reaching?
Yes.
All right. And was he reaching behind your back where you believed your weapon to be while he was still applying that pressure to your neck?
Yes.
Okay. And what else is occurring at this time? Is he saying anything to you?
No.
All right. Is he still applying that pressure to your neck?
Yes.
Are you still having difficulty breathing?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And what happens then?
I was scraping, like, kind of clawing at his neck in an effort to get him somewhat off of me, and I was screaming for the clerk to call shift command.
Okay. And where was Deputy Russell at this time?
On top of Mr. Sykes.
Okay. Could you observe what Deputy Russell was trying to do?
He was trying to get him off of me, but I don't know what he was doing.
Okay. All right. What happens then?
Detective Kane, I saw him. I could see him by looking above and behind me.
Are you still on the ground
Yes.
yet? And is the defendant still on top of you?
Yes.
Is the defendant still applying pressure to your
Yes.
neck with his forearm?
Yes.
Is he still trying to reach behind you where you believe your gun to be?
Yes.
Okay. And at this time you see Detective Kane?
Mhm.
What do you observe about Detective Kane do at this time?
I don't know what Detective Kane did, but when Detective Kane came in, they were able to lift him enough that I could kind of squiggle out from
Okay.
underneath him.
And once you squiggled out, what did you observe?
I remember the commander coming in and kind of pulling me out of that back hallway.
And what's the commander's name for the record?
Dave Pradell.
Okay. And at that point, what happened?
At that point, I was pulled out of the hallway.
Oh. Let me ask you, do you know a little bit about that trial? Was that a felony trial?
Yes.
And that was still ongoing at the time this had occurred?
Yes.
And just, now I know I asked you if that trial was a felony, just do you recall the charges of that trial?
Yes.
What were they?
There was 20 different counts ranging from CSC 1, kidnapping, felony firearm, armed robbery.
When the defendant had his forearm against your neck, and you had difficulty breathing, did you also lose consciousness at any time?
I didn't lose consciousness fully, no.
Not fully?
Toward the end, I was getting very spotty, but no, I didn't lose consciousness.
So you were getting spotty?
Yes. Lightheaded, I don't know if that
Getting
helps.
lightheaded? How long? And that was as a result of your airway being blocked?
And his weight.
And not only was he on top of you, but also Deputy Russell Hur was also on top of you?
Yes.
As a result of trying to pull him off of you?
Yes.
Nothing further. Any cross-examination?
Good morning, Judge.
Morning.
This happened towards the end of the trial?
The end of the day,
Okay. How many days has the trial been going on for?
I don't recall.
And is it fair to say that there have been some back and forth between deputies and Mr. Sykes throughout the trial?
No.
Was this the only day that there was any sort of commands made of Mr. Sykes?
No.
So there were other days that you guys had to
There was one day.
command. And was it always, did he turn around, look ahead of you, or?
It was a day when he was staring at me and attempting to furrow his brow at me.
Is it fair to say you had been in the courtroom for most of the trial?
Yes.
And the testimony during the trial was upsetting, correct?
Upsetting to who?
To whoever's hearing it. Was it upsetting to you?
Objection, relevant. House irrelevant, counsel.
I'll move on.
It's not. Nay.
Man, you said he was staring at a girl in the courtroom, correct?
That's what she told me.
And where was this girl seated in relation to the defense statement?
In the far back corner of the main part of the gallery.
And as you guys took him back, or Officer or Deputy Hurd took him back to the holding cell, you stayed out, correct?
Stayed out of what?
You stayed away from the holding area. You stayed in the courtroom itself?
No.
Where did you go?
Into the back hallway.
And it's Deputy Hurd that's actually moving him towards the holding cell, correct?
Walking with him.
And as he's walking with him, his hands are on him, correct?
No.
And at some point, does Deputy Hurd have to put his hands on him and kind of push him into the holding cell?
Not that I observed.
When you observe Mr. Sykes turn around and rush towards you, had he been touched by anybody?
Touched by anybody when?
By Deputy Hurd. Had Deputy Hurd put his hands on him before?
We had both put our hands on him to walk him, to face him in the direction where he needed to be walking.
And when he rushes towards you, does he touch Deputy Hurd in any way?
He shoved him out of the way.
And he said as he's running towards you, he's grunting, but he didn't say anything.
I didn't hear him say anything. I heard him grunt when he tackled me.
Oh. And as you saw him running towards you, you put your hand on your weapon, correct?
Over my holster.
And there's a locking mechanism on the holster, correct?
Yes.
Did that locking mechanism get, I guess, disabled?
It may have.
Do you recall writing a statement after this incident?
I said I believe that's what happened.
Okay. And in your statement, you said you believe that your right elbow hit the locking mechanism, correct?
Yes.
In your statement, you never mentioned that he reached behind your back, did you?
I don't know what the wording was to state that he was near the right side of my body.
And you never mentioned anything about feeling like he was tugging at your weapon. Did you mention any of that in your statement?
I don't recall.
May I put you in, sir?
Yes, you may show.
Thank you.
Madam Prosecutor, what you're approaching with.
Ma'am, did you mention in the statement anything about Mr. Sykes tugging at your weapon?
No, just that no, not that he was tugging at my weapon.
The only thing you said about the weapon is that you thought your elbow hit the locking mechanism. Is that correct?
I don't think that's the only thing I said about it.
You never saw the weapon in his hand, correct?
No.
Afterwards, you were offered medical treatment and you declined it, correct?
EMS came to the courtroom.
And did you go for medical treatment?
I didn't leave the building, no.
So is the answer no, you didn't
I mean,
go
I was seen by EMTs. I didn't
Right.
leave the building.
Okay. So you didn't need to go to a hospital or anything like that?
No.
You didn't have any injuries as a result of this?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Deputy. I have no further questions, Judge.
Okay, did you read that right?
Counsel, I asked you if your statement had indicated whether or not you mentioned in your statement about the defendant reaching for your weapon. I'm going to approach you with your statement.
You may
I'm
approach
going to
the
direct
witness.
your, may I approach your Honor?
You may.
Thank you. I'm going to direct your attention to this paragraph here. Can you take a look at the last few sentences? Read them to yourself. Okay. In your statement, did you mention that whether or not the defendant had reached for your weapon?
Yes.
Okay. And in your statement, did you also mention that he reached for the where you believe your weapon had fallen?
Yes.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Okay, thank you, Deputy. You are excused.
And this time, I'd like to call Deputy Russell her.
Spell the last name for us, Counsel.
Last name is H-E-R-R.
Thank you. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth? So help you God. Have a seat and pull the mic close to your mouth, please. Okay, you may proceed.
Thank you. Can you give your name for the record?
Russell Her.
Okay. And how are you employed?
Deputy, I'm gonna have you pull that microphone in really close. Thank
Russell
you.
Her.
Thank you. And how are you employed?
Wayne County
Okay. Are you with the Wayne County Sheriff?
Sheriff's Department. Yes.
All right. And are you deputy with the Wayne County Sheriff's Department?
Yes.
All right. And where are you stationed?
The Frank Murphy Hall of Justice.
Okay, counsel, I'm sorry to interrupt you. There's some construction going on outside. There's a fan blowing overhead, and there's a lot of movement going on. So if you could speak a little louder for me, that would be great, okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Okay. And were you assigned to a certain courtroom on October 1st, 2015?
Yes.
What
G2.
courtroom? G2? All right. What was going on in G2 that day?
Michael Sykes trial,
All right.
jury trial.
It was a jury trial? Okay. And was this a felony jury trial?
Yes.
All right. And were you there working with a fellow Wayne County Sheriff?
Yes.
Deputy?
Deputy
Okay.
Porter Rice.
All right. And now you stated that it was a Michael Sykes trial. Do you see that individual in the courtroom today?
Yes, I do.
All right. And can you identify where that person is in the courtroom?
He's in the red, sitting over at the far table.
All right. Let the record reflect that witness has identified defendant Michael Sykes.
You may continue.
Thank you. Now, on that day of October 1st, did something occur that you could bring through here today?
Yes.
All right. Can you tell me what happened?
During the trial, towards the end, Michael Sykes kept on staring at the victims, and he was instructed not to, keep his eyes either at his attorney or at the judge. And when we mentioned it, he kept on doing it throughout the trial.
Okay.
But when we mentioned it on that day, the lawyer stood up and instructed him instructed him to keep his eyes towards her
Okay.
or at the judge.
And was this the defendant's lawyer?
Yes.
All right. And that defendant was who, just for the record?
Michael Sykes.
Okay. Same defendant we have here today?
Yes.
Okay. And did the defendant comply?
Well, at that time he didn't.
Okay. What was his demeanor at that time?
He, started getting agitated in the seat and moving around, and then he started blurting out words, fuck this place, fuck you, and then Judge Roberson ordered him out of the courtroom.
All right. And did you assist in escorting the defendant out of the courtroom?
I told Mr. Sykes to follow me. I directed him to my direction over the jury platform into the holding cell hallway.
Okay. And where was Deputy Polderdyke at this time?
She was, I think she was like standing closer to the clerk's table.
Okay. Is that behind
I'm not positive on that.
Okay, that's fair. Where were you in relationship to the defendant?
I was like in front of, he was walking from the attorney bench towards me,
Okay.
so I was in front of him.
All right. And as he's going to the back, what is your positioning?
Then I turned, I let him pass me, and I sort of like got on like an escort position, guiding him through the doorway.
Okay.
And while the whole,
Were you behind in that?
not totally behind him, but I was off to the, like right onto the side of him,
Okay. All right.
leading him into the hallway.
Okay. What happened then?
Well, he's, flinching his shoulders and mumbling, and
When you say he's clenching his shoulders, was he making it difficult for you to pass through?
yes, I was
Why?
trying to lead him with my arm on his hand,
Okay.
on his arm, above the elbow, but he kept on flicking off, get your hands off of me, and I'm guiding him through the doorway, and he kept on looking over my shoulder, trying to back up, and mumbling stuff.
Okay. And had you told him had you told him that he could not speak to anyone?
Yes.
All right. And had you told him
I
that
just-
before you had let him out to the hall?
No.
Okay. What
No.
point did you tell him he could not address anyone?
I just, when he started doing it, I just said, let's go. Keep going, let's go back to the cell.
All right.
And I actually had to push him to the hallway
All right.
to get him to go, and then he gave up and started walking with me.
Okay.
And through the whole time into the hallway, he's flinching his shoulders, mumbling, but he's proceeding going to the cell.
All right. And then what happened?
Well, I got him in front of the cell, and we're ready about to go in. I'm right behind him.
All right. Do you know where Deputy Polderdyke is?
Poor guy says she's overlooking from a distance from the courtroom door that I let him in through.
All right. And so does that make her behind you at this time?
It makes her onto my right,
Okay.
but further away.
All right. So she's to your right, but behind you.
Right.
All right. Okay. What happens then?
Well, as soon as I said, let's get in, I went to go push him in, and he went to walk, and as he went in, he turned real fast, mumbling, I'm going to kill that bitch, and ran after her down the hallway and tackled her.
All right. And was this as he was about to enter the cell?
Yes.
All right. And he said, I'm going to kill this bitch?
Mumbling, growling, you're like a mad animal.
Okay. And did he run towards her?
Yep.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. And when he ran towards Deputy Polderdyke, what does he do?
He grabs her throat, tackles her.
Okay.
They're on the ground.
Was she on the ground?
Yes.
Was her back to the ground?
Yes.
All right. Where was the defendant?
On top of her.
Okay. Were his hands still on top of her, on her neck at this time?
Yes. He was choking her out.
Okay. What happened then?
I immediately ran to get him off of her,
Okay.
which I didn't have. I mean, he had so much strength I couldn't pull him off of her.
Okay. Where was his hand at this time?
Well, it was on her throat at first,
Okay.
but I didn't see him reaching around or anything.
Okay.
at that time. My main concern was get him off.
All right. Okay. So you say at first they were on her throat. Did you see his hands go anywhere else?
I saw him like move around, but I couldn't pull him off
Okay.
because he had too strong of a hold on her.
Okay. And where was his hold on her?
Around her, her waist, her shoulder, right around.
Okay.
It's just like slipped from her neck and right around, right around the side of her,
Okay.
out of her.
Let the record reflect that the witness is making a motion with his hand as of a hugging motion. Is that correct? Is that how the defendant was gripping Deputy Poltergeist at this time?
Yes.
Okay. And then what happened?
I couldn't get him off of her, and she's screaming for help. One of the clerks came in, and she ran back. She's saying, go call for help, call her help. And at the same time, I'm calling for help, but I didn't want to give him the chance to do anything, so I kept my hands on him.
Okay, and let me just back you up a little bit. Did you also see whether or not what his hands were doing in relationship to her? Were they on her throat and then around her waist, or could you observe what else he was doing?
At that time, my main concern was getting her off,
Okay.
or getting him off of her.
And you're behind him?
Yes.
On top of him?
I'm on top of him, and he's on top of her.
Okay, and your focus is on getting him off of her?
Yes.
Okay, and what happens then? The clerk is trying to get help. What else?
She came in,
What's the clerk's name?
Alicia
Okay.
comes in, she runs out, and then Detective Kane comes running in.
Okay. And are you still on top of the defendant?
Yes.
Okay, and is he still on top of Deputy Poltergeist?
Yes.
Okay. And what did Detective Kane do at this time?
He came in, started grabbing at him,
Grabbing at who?
Michael Sykes,
Okay.
and he was, at that time, I saw around, right around that time I saw the round roll down the hallway in front of me.
Okay, and you're saying around, just
Around a bullet.
a bullet? Okay, and you saw a bullet rolling down?
Right,
Okay.
going away from us.
From you? Okay.
And so I kept on pulling harder and harder, and I couldn't get him off. And the only way I can get him off is like taking my fingers into his eyes.
All right. And was the only person wearing a weapon Deputy Poltergeist?
Yes.
And that would have been the only person who had bullets, rounds in her weapon?
Yes.
Okay. And so that round that you saw rolling could have only come from Deputy Poltergeist's weapon?
Yes.
Okay. And did you ever observe whether or not Deputy Poltergeist had a grip of her weapon?
No, I couldn't.
Could she even had a grip of her weapon?
Objection, speculation, Judge.
Well, lay the proper foundation.
Did you observe Deputy Poltergeist's hand?
No.
Okay. All right. So as you observed that round rolling down, what were you doing?
That's when I took my hands away from around him and grabbed his eyes
Okay.
and started pulling them back.
All right.
So then that made him lift up. And that's when Detective Kane comes running in, assisting me. And then right shortly after that, Sergeant Phillipson came running in.
Okay. And when Sergeant Phillipson came running in, what happened?
He started warning him that he's going to be tased, and I just came out and said, "Tase the motherfucker."
Okay. And was the defendant still on top of Deputy Poltergeist?
Yes.
All right. And what was Detective King doing?
He's on the side of him, trying to get him off, get her out, and get him off of her.
Okay.
And while I was pulling from the top, from his back, lifting him up, we couldn't do nothing.
Okay. And what did Detective Phillipson do?
Well, even after he tased him, he still was hanging on, but he took his left hand and threw it in the back and said, "No, no, no."
Okay.
And then I said, "Tase him again."
All right.
So
That's
then
the second tase now?
that was the second tase. He threw his right hand back,
All right.
but he was still fighting. He wouldn't let me cuff him.
And so while he's being tased, you're trying to cuff him?
I was trying to cuff him up.
Okay. Did you get a
No.
tase? Sorry.
Well, I got the one end of the cuff on.
Okay. After the second tase, were you able to get a cuff on?
No.
Okay. Did it take the third tase to get a cuff?
Yes, as soon as I told him to tase him again, he moved his hands closer.
Okay.
Then I got both cuffs on him.
All right. And so while he's being tased, you're trying to cuff the defendant. Was he and making it difficult for you to do so?
Yes.
And is that why you had to be tased 3 times?
Yes.
Okay. And once you were able to get the cuffs on the defendant, was he still on top of Deputy Polderdyke?
She, as we were getting them cuffed, she managed to get out.
Okay.
Okay, my main concern, my focus was on just cuffing him.
Okay. All right.
So she got out, and then I just lifted him up and then walked him to the cell.
All right. Once you walked him to the cell, was he compliant?
Well, no, he turned around, mumbling stuff, and we left him in the cell. I just closed the door.
Nothing further. Okay, cross-examination.
Deputy, you never saw Mr. Sykes touch that weapon, right?
Pardon me?
You never saw his hands on that weapon, correct?
No.
And how this whole struggle was fairly quick, was it not?
Well, it felt like it was 10 minutes when it was only like 2.
So it was in reality, it was under 2 minutes, correct?
I couldn't say for sure.
Oh, you don't know.
It felt like
It
10
felt
minutes.
like a long time, but
We
in
were out there for
hindsight,
a while.
it really wasn't, right?
We were out there for a while, so probably at least 3 to 4 minutes.
All right. Now, as he breaks away from you, as you're putting him in the holding cell, and he rushes Deputy, is it Polderdyke?
Yes.
As he rushes her, he immediately tackles her to the ground. Correct?
Yes.
And you don't see him. You said he had his hands up near her throat, or on her throat, and then around her body. Is that fair?
Yes.
Right. And you never see him kind of put his forearm into her neck, though, do you?
I don't see it,
Okay.
but...
And you're directly on top of him the whole time, correct?
Yes.
Now, as he breaks away from you, he never goes toward the door of the courtroom, correct?
That's the way he was running, towards the door.
But he immediately tackles Deputy Popperdike.
No,
Polderdyke. Polderdyke.
Yes.
All right. And there's a struggle there, correct?
Yes.
And he never breaks free from there and attempts to leave the courtroom, correct?
No.
He simply attacks her.
Yes.
And were you there for most of this trial or no?
Yes.
relevant. Objection.
So she doesn't even know where I'm going yet.
I don't know where he's going either. He's already answered the question. He said yes. Your
How-
next question.
Okay, how far into this trial did this take place?
Again, objection relevant.
Well, no. We've asked
No.
about, there have been some questions already about the trial, the testimony in the trial. So answer the question.
Can you repeat that?
Just how many days into the trial does this happen?
This is towards the end.
Right. And so how many days had gone by of him in this courtroom?
I would say a week, maybe a week and a half.
Oh. So it had gone on for some time.
Yes.
Right? And throughout the trial, there had been multiple instances of him being issued commands to, turn around, don't look that way, that sort of thing. Is that fair or no?
Yes.
And the were there more commands made that day, or was it kind of on par with how things had been going throughout?
That day
That day was
was
more.
more. Yes.
And right before this happened, it was Deputy Popperdike that was making the commands of which way for him to look, right?
That day it was, yes. Is that the question?
Yeah, it was her that was making the commands, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
wasn't-
the judge also told him to either look at the attorney or him,
Right.
and that's when he got frustrated.
And in terms of who was out of the deputies that was having the most communication with him, it wasn't you, correct?
No, it was the female.
Right. And that's who he attacks in court, correct?
Yes.
Right. You were closer to him, but he doesn't attack you. He kind of pushes you out of the way and goes directly towards her, right?
Yes.
And sir, you never received any medical treatment. And sir, you never received any medical treatment
No.
after this, correct? You didn't need any, right?
Didn't need medical, no.
Right. And to your knowledge, no other deputies sought medical treatment, correct?
Well, at the courtroom they did.
Okay. But nobody left and went to a doctor or a hospital or anything like that, right?
No.
Thank you, nothing else. Thank you, Deputy.
Okay, any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Okay,
Oh,
thank
actually,
you.
yes, Your Honor, strike that.
Okay.
Sorry. Counsel asked you if you observed the defendant place his forearm on Deputy Polderdyke's neck. You stated you did not. Was there a reason why you did not?
Because my main concern was pulling him off of her, and I wasn't looking at his hands. I was concerned getting him off of her.
Okay, so your focus was otherwise.
Right.
Your focus was to simply pull him off.
Yes.
Nothing further.
Okay, thank you. You are excused, Deputy Herr.
At this time, I'd like to call Detective Kane.
Okay. Spell the last name.
Kane.
Thank you.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth? So help you God?
I do.
Have a seat and put a mic close to your mouth, please.
Okay, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Kane, can I have your name for the record?
Yes, my name is Robert Kane. I'm a detective with Detroit Police Department, Sex Crimes Unit.
And I'm going to take you back to October 1st, 2015. Were you here in a courtroom at the Frank Murphy Hall of Justice in the city of Detroit County, Wayne on October 1st, 2015?
I was.
Okay, and why were you here?
I was here for a trial. I was the officer in charge of that trial.
And what was the nature of that trial?
It was for a sexual assault case involving Michael Sykes.
Okay. And you state involving Michael Sykes. Was Michael Sykes the defendant?
That's correct.
All right. And do you see Michael Sykes in the courtroom today?
I do.
Do you identify where Michael Sykes is in the courtroom?
Yes, he's sitting at the defense table with a burgundy jumpsuit on.
Let the record reflect the witness as identified the defendant.
You may continue.
Thank you. And on October 1st, while you're acting as officer in charge, and in that courtroom, which courtroom was that?
It was courtroom G2 in the basement.
Okay. And that would be the basement of Frank Murphy Hall of Justice?
Correct.
All right. And something happened that day that brings you to court here now.
It did.
What happened?
I had heard a commotion. I was in the courtroom at the prosecution table, and I had heard a commotion from behind the lockup area The door was closed. I had heard a commotion. Events that had happened before the deputies brought Michael Sykes back to the lockup area had concerned me. So when I heard that commotion, I ran to that door and opened it.
Okay, and let me just stop you there. You said that there something had happened before which led you to be concerned. What had happened before in the courtroom?
There was some things going on with Michael Sykes looking at victims in the audience in the courtroom, and they had made a complaint to the deputy, and the judge had stopped the trial and addressed what was going on in the courtroom. And
let me just stop you. These were victims on a criminal sexual conduct matter?
That's correct.
And that was the nature of the trial?
Correct.
Okay. And did the judge address
He
that?
did.
Okay. And what happened?
Well, after the judge addressed the situation, Mr. Sykes became agitated, and it was a hard time getting him out of the courtroom at first.
Okay. And you say it was a hard time getting out of the courtroom at first. Why is that? What did you observe that appeared to make it a hard time to get him out of the courtroom?
When he got to the lockup door, he had stopped and tried to communicate with his family.
Okay.
And
is that contrary to the rules and how a defendant should be let out of the courtroom?
During the course of the trial, Mr. Sykes and his family were told not to make contact with each other or make contact with the victims in the audience.
Okay, and he was still making contact as he was being let out of the courtroom?
That's correct.
All right. What happened then?
Then he was led back into, like I say, the lockup area, and I heard the commotion. I ran to the door, I opened it, and I observed Michael Sykes on top of the female deputy with his hands around her neck.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
And Michael Sykes had his hands around the female deputy around her neck. Did you see any other deputies in that area?
Yes, the male deputy was on top of Michael Sykes trying to pull him away off of the female deputy.
Okay. What else did you observe about Michael Sykes at this time? That there was a struggle going on between the three of them, and I called to the court and told them to call for help, okay.
And I ran into the situation.
Okay, and then when you ran into the situation, what did you do?
I told Michael Sykes to let her go, and I applied knee strikes with my right knee to the left side of his chest area.
Okay, and was the male deputy still on top of Michael Sykes?
He was.
All right, and as you're striking Michael Sykes, defendant here, what did he do?
He continued to assault the deputy, the female deputy.
And how was he continuing to assault the female deputy?
He was on top of her. He had a forearm, which I believe was a left forearm, at her neck area, and I couldn't see his other hand.
Okay, why couldn't you see his other hand?
It wasn't in. I couldn't see it. I just,
okay, so
from my
just wasn't in
position,
your
I couldn't
line
see
of
it.
sight?
Correct.
Okay, all right. But you observed his one forearm on her neck?
Correct.
Okay. And did she appear to be having trouble breathing?
It appeared to me her face was red, and she was trying to yell, "Get off me!" but she was having a hard time, in my opinion, doing that.
Okay. And were you still striking the defendant at this time?
I was.
All right. And what happened then?
I was, the male deputy that was on top of her and myself were able to get him somewhat off of her, where she was able to squirm on the floor away from him, from Michael Sykes. And at that time, other deputies came in, and at some point, Michael Sykes was tased by a deputy, I don't know who, at least two times.
All right. And you say at least 2 times, but it could have been more?
Yes.
All right. And did you observe what he did once he was tased the final time?
When he was, at one point when he was tased, he had flipped, and I observed a gun on the floor, and I observed I don't know who again, I observed a deputy step on the gun and move it away from the situation.
All right. And that gun, you said you observed it once the defendant flipped?
Yes.
What was his body position prior to flipping?
His body was positioned on top of the deputy,
Okay.
and then it was turned once the other deputies came to the area, and when he was tased, his body flipped, and that's when I observed the gun on the floor.
And would that gun have been right underneath where Michael Sykes had been?
And the female deputy, correct.
And the female deputy, okay. And you observed another deputy kick away that gun, or put his foot on the gun?
He didn't kick it, he stepped on it,
Stepped on it?
and then slid it
Okay.
on the floor, away from the situation.
And then what did you observe?
I observed the deputies trying to handcuff Michael Sykes with difficulties, and he was tased again.
And by your observation, did it take multiple tases for the officers to apply those handcuffs on the defendant?
At least 2 times that I recall.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Okay, cross-examination.
Detective, you never saw that firearm in Mr. Sykes' hands, correct?
Correct.
And you never saw it in his possession, correct?
Correct.
And at the point that you say he flipped over, and then you saw the weapon, he wasn't even on the ground, correct?
Before he flipped over, yes, he was on the ground.
He was, between him and the ground was the female deputy, right?
Correct.
And once he flipped over, the female deputy came off the ground as well, or no?
No. The female deputy, before the other deputies came to the situation, the male deputy that was on top and myself were able to free the female deputy somewhat, and she squirmed out of the situation away. And then the deputies came in, they tased him, he flipped, and I saw the gun.
All right. And so then the gun was underneath where the female deputy was before she was able to squirm over.
It was in that area, correct.
And shortly after that, Mr. Sykes is flipped over, tased and flipped over, right?
Correct.
Right. But you never see him actually touch that gun, correct?
I did not see the gun in his hands, no.
Right. You never saw the gun anywhere on his body, right?
No.
In fact, you wrote a statement out after the incident, and you made no mention of the gun. Is that correct?
I'd have to look at it to make sure, but I don't recall.
Okay. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Doctor, did you make any mention at all of the gun in your statement?
There's no mention of the gun in this short report, no.
Thank you. When you came back and started assisting with this, with getting Mr. Michael Sykes off of the female deputy, the entire time he was basically having a struggle with the deputy, and he never tried to break free and leave the courtroom, though, correct?
He wasn't in the courtroom, he was in the back lockup area.
All right.
He was assaulting the deputy. I can't say whether he was trying to leave or not, but he was on the ground assaulting the female deputy.
Okay. And sir, you said you saw him with his hands on her neck.
When I
Correct.
first opened the door, correct.
Right. And then you see him still kind of wrestling with her. Is that a fair statement or no?
Yes, that's fair.
Right. You never see him punch or kind of deliver blows to her, though, do you?
No, I do not.
You don't see him kind of lean with his forearm on her neck or her head or anything, do you?
I do.
You do that.
The left forearm came in contact with her neck.
Okay. How long was it in contact with her neck?
Estimated 5 to 10 seconds.
Thank you. No other questions.
Okay, any redirect?
Your statement, what was the focus of your statement that you made?
Just what I observed when I walked into the lockup area from the courtroom.
And in your observations, were they primarily the defendant being on top of and assaulting the female deputy?
That's correct.
And that would have been your focus then, as you're writing your statement?
That's correct.
Thank you, nothing further.
Okay, thank you. You are excused, Deputy James.
No further witnesses, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Kuja. Are you calling any witnesses on behalf of the defendant?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, you may proceed with your motion.
Thank you, Your Honor. The people who move to wind over on all 5 counts, I'm going to actually start from count 5 and work my way up as I make my argument.
Okay, thank you.
Escape awaiting for trial for a felony. You've already heard testimony that this incident occurred in the course of a trial, the criminal sexual conduct trial and kidnapping trial. Therein lies the felony. The escape. If I was to read MCL 750.197, indicates that an escape is one who breaks or escapes while in or being transferred to or from a courtroom or courthouse or a place where a court is being held, or who attempts to break or escape from the jail or place of confinement is guilty of the felony. What we have here is the defendant escaping while he's being led to his cell. As the deputies who were trying to lead him away out of the courtroom to his cell, he is about to enter the cell when he turns around, shoves Deputy Russell Herr out of the way, and attacks Deputy Lacey Holderdyke. And that, she's also standing Holderdyke. Thank you. Doesn't matter if he escaped the courtroom. Doesn't matter if he escaped the courthouse. What matters is that he broke the protocol as he was trying to, as the deputies were trying to get him into that cell. He fled from his cell to attack the deputy. Therein lies count 5, Your Honor. As for count 4, resisting and obstructing, took 3 tases to subdue the defendant in order to handcuff him. There lies as well as the multiple attempts, the multiple deputies, multiple officers trying to rip him off of her, rip the defendant off of Deputy Holderdyke as he's strangling her, as he's clutching her neck, as he's reaching behind her. And therein lies count 4, disarming police officer of their firearms. Deputy Holderdyke repeatedly stated that she felt her weapon had released and she believed it to be under her. That is the same place that the defendant is reaching around her, right under her weapon, reaching around to the area, the side of her body where her weapon had been holstered and it was now underneath her body, and where the defendant is reaching around repeatedly while he's got another arm around her neck, strangling her, cutting off her airway, making it difficult for her to scream out, as Detective Kane indicated. Therein lies count 3, disarming the firearm. We also have the testimony of Detective Kane that once the defendant was removed from that area, and once the deputy Holderdyke had already squirmed away, that's where you see that weapon that she believed was under her, that weapon that she believed and felt and knew the defendant was reaching for while he had his other arm around her neck trying to cut off her airway. So therefore we ask you to bind over on count 3. Assault with intent to do great bodily harm less than murder encompasses the offense of strangulation. Deputy Holderdyke indicated she saw stars, she couldn't breathe, she was breathing with difficulty because not only did he put his hands around her neck when he tackled her to the ground, he then applied pressure with his forearm to continue cutting off her air passage while he's reaching around her to grab for that gun. And then leads us to count 1, assault with intent to murder. His intent is clear. He says, I'm going to kill this bitch. When he runs after her, tackles her to the ground, and he's on top of her, applying the force of his body, applying the force of his forearm, applying the force of his other arm around her in that bear hug while he's grabbing for that gun. So the intent is clear. He's trying to kill her. He's trying to make sure she can't breathe. She's trying to ensure that she can't breathe and then may, in fact, die. And as a result, I'm asking for Find over on all counts.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kuja.
Judge, I'm going to try not to exaggerate the fact. I don't recall hearing anything about people seeing stars.
No, it wasn't stars. It was that she became lightheaded.
Right. So I'll stick to the facts that, that were established on the record. Judge, the statute for escape awaiting trial for felony is that he breaks the jail or place of confinement and escapes. Or it says, or who leaves the jail or place of confinement without escaping. So there's still got to be an attempt to escape.
So what was he attempting to do?
He's assaulting the deputy, Judge. That's what he's doing.
Attempting to kill the person and
No.
instead not to escape?
Judge, he's assaulting the deputy. He makes no rush towards the court. And every witness that testified said he pushes past Deputy Herr. He goes to Deputy Polderdijk. I think I got it that time. And he begins to assault her. Now, he never tries to push past her and go to the doors or try to leave. He's reacting to their interactions that have been going on throughout the trial, and it doesn't excuse what he did, but it's sticking to the elements of the escape awaiting trial for felony. No attempt to escape is ever made.
Counsel, will you concede that he was on his way? He was told he was getting ready to go back to the cell. He was excused from the courtroom by the judge. He was being led to his cell. They were attempting to put him in his cell, and that he then turned away from the place where he had been directed to go for confinement, and he's now headed in a different direction.
And Judge,
answer my question. Was he headed in a different direction, or
in the same hallway? In the same hallway of the
different direction, not toward that cell. Is that correct?
Correct.
The cell where he was ordered to go. The
Correct.
cell where the deputies were leading him to go. Okay, you may continue with your argument.
And Judge, the court knows, the narrow or the small nature of the hallways back there where the holding cell is. That's not a large distance. I mean, it's a couple steps. They said everything stayed back in the holding area, and it was not in the courtroom itself. And with regard to the disarming a firearm, Judge, the statute's clear. He did take a firearm. There's no testimony that he ever touched the firearm, let alone took it. The testimony was that she reached for her firearm, Deputy Polderdijk, when she saw him running towards her, and that her elbow might have hit the clasp. But there's nothing to indicate that the reason the firearm was dislodged is because he actually grabbed it. She said,
from a probable cause standard, Mr. Kuja, the testimony from Deputy Polderdijk is that his arm was going around the back where her gun was holstered, and that she felt something underneath her gun.
Right.
The testimony from the officer in charge, Deputy Kane, I don't know if he's deputy, but Officer Kane, was that once the defendant was flipped off of her, that there's this gun that appeared. And so, from a probable cause,
right.
the deputy testified she was the only one that was armed in that hall. She
Right.
testified as to where that gun was holstered. And now she testifies that your client tackles her, and that he's putting his arm around her in the area where her gun is holstered. And now we have a gun, the testimony is that there's a gun that's no longer holstered, that's
Judge.
on the floor, away from the deputy, and now your client, and it's visible after your client is flipped off Deputy Polderdijk.
But Judge, the gun was underneath Deputy Polderdijk. The testimony was from Detective Kane that he's never on, Mr. Sykes is never on the ground. He's on top of Deputy Polderdijk, and then she squirms away. And when they tase him and he flips,
therein is the gun underneath where Deputy Polderdyke was. He's never on the ground. He's on top of Deputy Polderdyke. So the firearm was underneath her. And Judge, an attempt is not enough for the disarming the firearm. The statute clear. It doesn't say attempt to take away the firearm. It says did take a firearm from the lawful possession of the deputy. And
So, Mr. Kuchar, based on the testimony, probable cause, I'm finding
Alright.
that the testimony was that the gun was in the holster. By the time your client finished his fiasco, it was no longer in the holster. It was on the ground, and the testimony from the deputy Polderdyke that he was reaching there, and now her gun was no longer in her holster. I'm satisfied.
Alright.
He disarmed us. You may continue.
And
if you
Judge,
need to.
with regard to the assault with intent to murder, I submit this is an assault with intent to do great bodily harm. The testimony was that it was 5 to 10 seconds. Nobody even received any medical attention afterwards. There was no injuries described. I mean, they couldn't even increase count for to assault causing injury. It's assaulting a police officer, which we're conceding is a question of fact. But there's no injury whatsoever to substantiate an assault with intent to murder. It's at most an assault with intent to do great bodily harm. And I think the court has seen plenty of similar types of assaults where a police officer is not involved. All right, and on these facts, it would not be charged an assault with intent to murder. So I'd ask the court to not bind over an assault with intent to murder, and I submit that an assault with intent to do great bodily harm is a question of fact on these facts.
Okay, thank you. It's your motion.
Well, Your Honor, my argument, I believe the court has reiterated people's arguments as to counts 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'm going to argue as to count 1. Injury is not a requirement of assault with intent to murder, and that is the crux of defense counsel's argument that there is no injury. What we have here is a clear intent when the defendant runs charging towards the deputy, I'm going to kill this bitch, tackles her to the ground, strangles her with both hands, then further applies further pressure with the forearm such that she can't breathe, she sees stars, she gets lightheaded.
She didn't testify that she saw the stars. She said it got spotty.
Spotty,
She
I'm
was
sorry.
lightheaded.
I strike that. It got spotty and she got lightheaded. And then you have testimony from Deputy King that she's trying to scream out, but she can't because of that force on her neck. So the intent is clear. The defendant made it easy for us. He said, I'm going to kill this bitch. And then he attempted to do so.
Okay, I'm ready to make my ruling, and certainly I've asked questions, pointed questions, Mr. Kuchar, so that my ruling could be very short. With respect to count 1, the assault with intent to murder, your client, he verbalized his intent before he took action. He said that he was going to kill. He was going to kill her. He attacked a female deputy, so it's clear, based on his words, coupled with his action, putting his forearm against her neck, the inability to remove him while the forearm is on her neck. It's clear to at least this court that his intent was to murder her, to kill her, just as he said. I've already indicated for the record the count 3 about disarming the police officer, the peace officer. The gun was in her holster. By the time everything was over with your client, it's no longer in the holster, and that's not the only reason why I'm finding that the people have met their burden. As I indicated earlier, the testimony of the deputy was that he was reaching around where the gun was located, and so you put 2 and 2 together, probable cause, he disarmed her. And then I've already stated for the record with respect to count 5, the escape, he was being guided into his cell. That's where he was supposed to go. He turned and went in the other direction, and I'm satisfied the people have met their burden as to all 5 counts. The defendant will be bound over to the Wayne County 3rd Circuit Court. The arraignment on the information will be October 29th, 2015 at 9 o'clock a.m. Anything else on behalf of the people?
No, Your Honor.
On behalf of defendant?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you.